Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you want to learn more about what we do, go to officehours.global. We answer your questions 7 days a week. We have different subjects every day. Today is audio day. We've got a great audio panel here. So if you've got questions about audio especially, you can ask questions about most things. But audio is particularly good today. So this is Wednesday. This is our audio day. So if you've got questions about audio, this is a good day to ask those. You can ask them in Mokana. You can chat about them. You can vote on them. You do all those things. If you go to officehours.global/join and type your stuff in there, your particulars, we'll start sending you an email every day and tell you what's happening and give you links to Discord and give you links to Mokana. If you aren't in Mokana, don't worry about it. You can go to askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. You can ask those questions 24/7. So it doesn't matter when you think of the question, you can put it in there. And usually if it's a technical question, if it's about, things like that, we'll throw them in. Well-formed, one question at a time. So if you have a bunch of questions, put them all in one at a time, not a big stack of them. But if you do those things, we'll throw your question in usually within the next day or two. And then we'll get to them. And let's go ahead and get to these questions. Bill, what do we have?
Tim Holmes starts us off this morning, Alex, from San Lorenzo, California, says, when mixing sound for a live band, what's the order that you go through when they first fire everything up? The order that you would use to get a basic sound level?
Good, Jesse.
So when they're first firing up, we go with whoever's ready. But when we're actually getting into the mix, and when I talk about the mix, we're talking about venues for 100 people or fewer. When we do mixing, it's for small venues. We start with the trap set usually because that one is going to be loud no matter what. And then we build every other instrument around the sound that the drums are pushing into the room anyway. And when we start with the trap set, we usually start with the kick, because if the kick doesn't sound good, nothing in your show is going to sound good.
Go, Jeffrey.
I totally agree on that one. So for me, if you can't, the first thing you do is a pink noise, and that'd be RTA, trying to figure out the levels from there. If you can't do that, because it's going to depend on the situation. Like for instance, if a band is playing during the point where people are eating or anything like that they don't want to have sound check from there. It also depends on if you have monitors or in-ear monitors. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll actually have the in-ear monitors go first, and then we'll on the fly just do the live on the main speakers, because a lot of times we've got that already dialed in. But yeah, drums are usually first on the thing, because usually the guitar players just start playing anyway, and then of course the vocals afterwards, and then of course you get the whole band all together. You also have to add horns or any other keyboards or anything like that, and then of course the vocals, and then they do a song, and then you're off to go.
Go, Jeff.
So there's a line check, which is making sure that everything is actually functioning correctly. All the microphones are clean, they're patched to the right spots, and I'm assuming when you get to this point, that's already done. So if you're pressed for time, the problem with the start with the kick, then move on to the snare progression is it kind of wears out the band if you take a long time doing that. So it's a good idea, especially if you're a band that needs to do quick sound checks, to have sort of your song that you know well. And there are certain songs that are arranged in a way that kind of make natural sound checks. If the band actually starts playing, and it may have an intro that is full, but then quickly we get to the first verse and it's like maybe an acoustic guitar and a vocal. And then halfway through that verse, the bass adds in. And we get to the chorus, the drums add in. And the second verse, there's more. So the song is actually developed in sort of a sound check way, and you can actually tweak mixes when you don't have time for sound check as the band is playing, if that first song is chosen that way. Vocal is extraordinarily important, because that's what people are there to listen to most of the time. So getting the vocal right, don't save that for last. Don't spend all your time on drums and keyboards. Get the vocal level correctly. And level is way more important about a mix than anything else. If stuff is out of balance, then it doesn't matter if it's EQ'd correctly. So all the other stuff can get tweaked during the show if you don't have time for a significant amount of time for a sound check. Getting the levels right from the beginning is good.
Good. Mickey?
Yeah, like Tim mentioned, like upon firing everything up, and I would go with what Jeffrey mentioned, you'd typically start with your system tuning, getting pink noise through having your system engineer or system tech EQ the loudspeaker system, time align them if you have multiple sets of speakers, if you have center fills or side fills or delay towers. That's what you would typically start with, because by the time you fire up your PA system, the backline is still setting up. They're still getting all the instruments in, the guitar amps, miking everything up. So start with your system tuning and then move on to, once the backline is all ready to go, start with the line check with your guitar techs and your drum techs. And then after that, once the band is ready, bring them in for your sound check.
Next question.
John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania is up next. The Constellation 8K switcher has a talkback function. Does anyone actually use it?
Mickey?
People will try to use it, and then they'll soon figure out that they don't want to use it. If there are people that use it regularly, it's not by choice.
I don't know anyone that uses regularly. I mean, I think that it is. Look, we've got a couple constellations. They work really well in a lot of places. The talkback has never really worked. We've had trouble talking to the cameras. We've had trouble getting the audio in. We've had trouble with just about everything related to talkback in the constellations. And so there may be somebody out there that's using it. I just don't know any of them. And I know a lot of people using constellations. So that it's definitely something that, again, I think audio is still a little bit of a challenge for Blackmagic. Next question.
Ottawahahi Black Bear Marshall in the Oahu Nation has our next question. 2110 was sold to the industry as uncompressed SDI HDoIP, with Blackmagic Design now using their own compressed flavor of 2110. Is this another misstep in making their products less compatible to industry standards used by other gear like they did in the past with 3G and so forth?
So I don't know if they really, it wasn't, I don't know if it was really a misstep with 3G. I think that the SMPTE was going a little slow, and Blackmagic needed to move forward with what they were doing, and they did. And then they had another format that you could jump to. You just had to know that it was there. But it allowed them to move forward more quickly, which is what they're doing with 2110. I talked to someone actually at NAB in the 2110 spec group, and they were actually pretty excited about it. So not in a bad way, in a good way. And the reason for that is that 2110 always, by nature, it was uncompressed, but it always had in the spec that there could be, it was codec agnostic, that you could do other codecs in it. There's nothing that Blackmagic's doing that's breaking the format. The format was designed to allow multiple formats to go through it. The spec was designed to allow this. So I think that they're excited about it, because moving to a more compressed platform makes it much more accessible to a lot of folks. I think that 2110 uncompressed, especially as you start going to 4K and above, requires an enormous amount of IT infrastructure to support, and so that really is really negatively affects the expansion of it, and it's definitely hit a lot of folks. And so I think Blackmagic has stepped forward and said, okay, well, here's something that's, I think, halfway between 2110 and NDI, and so that's what they're kind of proposing, out to this process. And I think that they have to. If you look at the bigger cameras that they're building, especially things like the dual 8K per eye, 90 frames a second, they cannot uncompressed to the 8K per eye, 90 frames a second. You're talking about bandwidth that's nearing 100 gigs a second uncompressed. So maybe even more. So about 90, over 100 megs a second. And so you have to start thinking about compression when you start to get to those kind of resolutions and those kind of frame rates. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. What's a good video inspection tool for getting behind hard-to-access gear, walls, crawl spaces, and other hard-to-reach areas?
Courtney?
I used to always carry a makeup pocket mirror with me and a light, or a lighted one, which was handy for adjusting monitors. If you have to get to the back of the monitor and see what's on the front of the monitor, that can sometimes be quite problematic without a mirror. But one for inspecting tight areas, I got one of these things, which is a USB inspection camera that has a little head on it has a ring of bright LEDs around it, borescope, and it has a fairly long flexible wire on it. It plugs right into my Android phone and gives me a nice video image, so I don't have to carry a whole bunch of extra equipment like a separate monitor or anything. So, and it's relatively cheap, as you can see there. Works pretty well for getting behind stuff and viewing stuff that I have to see if there's something gone awry in the back of a cabinet that I may have to pull out later.
Bill?
Yeah, those borescopes has blown up as a category on the web. You can find hundreds of them, and the small ones, like Courtney showed, are great for looking just inside around an outlet or something like that. Most of the time, these come with little built-in LEDs. You can actually light up what you're looking for inside a wall or something like that. For the long runs, if you're trying to really trace something, a lot of contractors now are carrying longer ones that are more controllable in terms of being able to go. Plumbers use them, electricians use them for determining whether or not there are blockages and things like that. So there's a whole range from these little cheap ones all the way up through more stable. I can move the head around a little bit to get around corners and things like that. So just pick your price point. If you're interested in inspecting runs like that, you got a lot of good tools out there, and they're not terribly expensive.
And as you start working with gear and you're trying to figure things out, also consider in your kit having a FLIR. That's a forward-looking infrared. FLIR cameras can be attached to your phone, and they're pretty useful to figure out why things might be overheating. You can see where they are pretty quickly. So as you start thinking about inspection tools, think about that as well. Next question.
Florence Donald in Silver Springs, Maryland, up next. What video editing software does the panel recommend for a beginner who has no experience editing? I use Mac computers, editing footage taken with Meta glasses, iPhones, and recorded using ECAMM.
Jesse?
If you're working with Meta glasses and iPhone, I would consider Final Cut Pro as your first editing suite. It depends on how much you want to grow as you continue to edit. And one thing I would caution about is worrying too much about the difficulty of the suite. So like people think that DaVinci Resolve is really, really difficult to learn, and the higher functionality of Resolve is difficult to learn. But whatever suite you choose, you can probably learn all the tools you need within an hour. And what I'd focus on more than where your slice and cut and crossfades are is how your software builds its databases and where your renders are ending up, where your proxies are ending up. Keep an eye on that stuff.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So what's really interesting is the only one that you could probably just download and start using is DaVinci Resolve. The other two you actually have to pay something to get into, the other two being Final Cut Pro and Adobe Premiere Pro. I actually was in California last week, and I used LumaFusion for the first time on my MacBook Air, and that's where I'm going with this next one. Is it really depends on what type of computer you have. If you've got something like a MacBook Air, especially one with the lowest of the specs, then putting something like Final Cut Pro on that could just take up all your hard drive space or all your memory trying to do what you need to do. So if you've already got it in ECAMM and you're just trying to take out bits and pieces, then something lower end like a LumaFusion might be in there. But if you're trying to make more than that, then you want to definitely go to those three that I talked about before, and then just really check out the specs and make sure that that this machine can handle what you're going to do with the editing.
Good, Bill.
Well, in all of these cases, they've gotten much easier, even the larger products, to use on a basic level. I know that Apple kind of pioneered this thing called progressive disclosure. When you first open up the software, you get the main tools visible. And if you want to go farther, if you want to get deep into it, you kind of open up more areas of the software and see more. So it doesn't just present a huge complex interface right off the bat. So that's kind of nice. And all the tools kind of have gone in that direction now. I would say that if you just want to basically learn some basic editing things, even the free tools like iMovie and some of the other simple things will get you started without having to spend a lot of money on it. And then some of those skills will transfer into the big ones. iMovie is kind of the starter. That and the new iPhone implementation of Final Cut are kind of the starter early, get your feet wet, and then you can add and go much farther with a main tool like Final Cut or any of the others. So just think about starting small and simple and learn some basic editing things just to start making things, and then you can grow into the next tools.
And I will admit that I have someone that I know right now that's using iMovie, and I find it incredibly frustrating. Like I find that the most frustrating app because it makes you feel like you can do things, and then it doesn't do any of those things. And it's just it is super again a super frustrating app in my opinion. I think that Apple's kind of failed at that app, and it's the most widely used app in the world when it comes to editing, video editing, and but it's I think that when you look at investing time, you want to think about how much time you're going to invest, and getting to know something takes a lot of time. And oftentimes I would just look at where do you want to scale into. I think that if you think that the 99% or 95% of stuff is going to be relatively simple, I'm just cutting all this stuff together, and I'm not going to do a huge amount of color work with it or effects or other things like that, but I'm going to move it quickly through, and I want some extra tools, I would really think about Final Cut for that. It's faster. It's much faster. It's much easier to bring things in. It'll conform a lot of things for you. The magnetic timeline makes it easy to go very, very fast at putting things together. If you think you're going to do heavy lifting ever in the future, if you're going to be doing, I might want to do 5.1 sound. I might want to do more color correction. I might want to do HDR. I might want to do any of those things down the path. I would really think about investing in Resolve. So I still open up Final Cut when I need to do quick stuff, but because most of my work now lives in the 5.1 and HDR world, I don't open up Final Cut very often because those tools are not well developed. I think Apple needs to work on those as well. So anytime I want to do any really, really particular work on it, I tend to move to Resolve to get that sorted out. But I will say Resolve is a much heavier, even though they're trying to make it simple to use, it's a much heavier app, and it's really things like just getting your project set up and your project settings, all what they need to do. You really have to, it's a much more complicated app to learn from the get-go, but it is the most complete app out there for video right now. Like it is like to do all the things that you may want to do with it. I think that there's not, I think that, and of course, there's things like Avid, but Avid is for Hollywood editors. Period. Like if you're Hollywood level editors, Avid's great for you, but no one else is using it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I kind of agree with your last comment there, Alex, that I would start in Resolve because I think transitioning between Final Cut and Resolve might be more difficult. And there is the cut page, and Resolve, Blackmagic put that in to enable an easy startup for people that are coming from the simple editors like iMovie and so on. So or for quick guys that are editing news footage and something, it's fairly easy to get that. There's a guy named Casey Ferris who has some instructional videos on the cut page in Resolve. So take a look at those and see if that's easy enough for you. And the nice thing about Resolve, it's free. You can start with the cut page and then move on to the other pages, which are much more complex, a method of editing. But all the tools are there. If you need some color correction, if you need to touch up the audio, it's got Fairlight built in. You can, and there's a pathway to learning the rest of it, which is good because you don't get derailed off the pathway of learning an editor by switching horses in midstream,
Yeah, and I have to admit, I haven't ever really gotten to the cut. I mean, I open the cut page, but I immediately move to the edit page for those things. I'm sure somebody finds it useful, but I don't. I'm always like, every once in a while, I accidentally drop something into it. I'm like, what is going on here? This is all broken. And then I go, oh, I'm in the cut page. I got to move over here. So, but I'm sure that they made it available for somebody. They have a nice little interface for that, and I should try it more often. But I would say that the more you get used to Resolve, and one thing I will also do is look at training inside of Blackmagic. They do 4-day courses and 3-day courses on Fairlight, on color correction, on editing, all those things. And so a lot of it has to do with that as well. So those are things to think about. And I think that, I resisted it for a long time, but I'm now I just find there was this point where I was 99% Final Cut, and now it's probably 75% Resolve. And it's just been this kind of slow transition for me because of just needing tools that I can't find in Final Cut. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
And it is cross-platform, I'll point out. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. The one place I go to the cut page is when I bring in a ZoomISO project with the Resolve edit. I work in the edit, and if you need to replace a clip, since it's not a true multicam, you set your in and out points, go to the cut page, use the sync bin, pick your angle, and go back to the edit page. That's the one time I use it.
There you go. Next question.
John Foltz in Seelings Grove, Pennsylvania. Is Blackmagic Design's 2110 gear ready for prime time yet, or is it too early?
I think that the gear itself may be ready for prime time. I think the problem is that the ecosystem's not complete yet. So unless you want to, they don't have enough of, they're working on it, but I don't think that they have enough where it solves all the problems. So now you have another thing that needs to be delivered to that. And I just feel like all the pieces aren't quite there with their partners, even with Blackmagic. I think that, I think it's going to take a little bit more time. So I'm excited in the direction that they're going. I think that they're probably, more scale, more, a lot of like the routers aren't very big yet. Those are the kind of things that, and the controllers and I think that they're still, it's a very cost effective. I was talking to someone about that and they were like the control panels for most 2110 solutions are cost more than the router that they built. So, or the switch that they built. So it's, I don't think I would jump into it just yet, but I keep tracking it and going, well, this is going to happen soon. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I wish I had a test lab here to just fire all this stuff up and play with it. At InfoComm, we did get to see Matt Jefferson play out from Blackmagic Media Express through a 2110 converter, converted it over to SDI, and then into a quad 4K hyperdeck. So the 8K hyperdeck he was showing can now do 4 quads. That was pretty cool to see. Because I owned that deck previously, and that was one of the things that I thought that it could do out of the box, that it could record 4 ISOs, even in just HD, but now it'll do 4K. So that was cool to see the beta software there, and that he was willing to show it to us there on the floor. He also showed some REST stuff, but their big banner out front of InfoComm, the whole show was IP 2110 video. I mean, they're making it front and center. That's the whole show. 60,000 people when you walk through the door. That was Blackmagic's foray, was just boom, hey, we're here and we're showing 2110.
And I do think that I think that for them it's going to be the future. And I think that I think you'll start to see much more heavy investment. It just takes a lot to prime that pump because it's an entirely new infrastructure and people have to rethink everything how they're delivering video. And I think that that's going to probably take another year or two. But I think over the next 2 years, you'll see Blackmagic probably move almost completely, although hilariously, they finally released these giant SDI routers. I'm probably the last ones they do, but there's the 120 by 120 we've been asking for like a decade. So it finally showed up. Next question.
Max Stillman in San Diego has another QR code submission here. Using the Blackmagic Decklink 8K and vMix, I'm getting an error when trying to use external outputs over the SDI with the message external render not found. Any ideas?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I have the same setup. So I have a Decklink inside of a Sonnet box. It goes Thunderbolt in. So you want to make sure that in the Blackmagic app, there's a Decklink. Let me see what the name of it is. It is called the come here. Anyways, there's a Blackmagic app where you need to set the resolution. So it's called Blackmagic Desktop Video Setup. You need to make sure that the card's set up with the right ports assigned. And then what I usually do is I'll go into the Blackmagic Media Express app and make sure that I can play stuff out. So I'll record something or pull up a clip inside of the Blackmagic Media Express app. And that takes vMix out of the scenario, just as if those two can talk to each other. Then once you get those two working inside of the external tab, external output, you want to pull up the device from the pop-up and make sure your firmware is all updated to the latest. Go to Blackmagic site. And then make sure that your frame rates match. So like, for example, I'm at 1920 by 1080, 29.97, but I have done 4K out of vMix with this box. And the last step is to just click that little red button, and then it should pop up and say external and not found, but it should find it. And then the other thing is in the performance tab, if you have a good graphics adapter, make sure that it is popped up in high performance mode. And in my case, it's a RTX 2070, and just change that from Intel to the NVIDIA or whatever you have, ATX or RTX or whatever graphics card you have. Just make sure you're in high performance mode.
Next question.
A Barara and Flowery Branch comes in with any device you recommend so I can connect my computer and devices so that it doesn't get affected by thunderstorms.
Good, Bill.
Well, I'm assuming you mean lightning, basically. So you're talking surge protection and power management. Always a good idea to have something in there if you're in an area where thunderstorms come by. Lightning is a killer of equipment, particularly if there's nothing between it. So there's all sorts of cutouts and things that are designed to be lightning suppressors. Although I still to this day, if I know that a thunderstorm is coming in, if I get a weather alert, I'm going to disconnect the power supply from the wall and leave a 1 foot at least gap there, because lightning is so strong in terms of its ability to get into your system, to affect everything, to leap small gaps, that even the best power conditioners, and there are some really good ones and really expensive ones out there, I'd prefer just that air gap if I can possibly get it. So just be aware of the weather around, but definitely put some things in there. I'm sure other people in this thread will give you some better ideas about individual pieces of gear.
Courtney?
Well, a lot of people talk about the surge protectors. They're not going to protect you from lightning strikes. There are certain things, if you live in an area that has a whole lot of electrical storm activity, there are lightning arresters, which you can have an electrician install on the building. It goes outside the building. It usually will include like a lightning rod and heavy grounding material that bypasses your electrical input. If it receives a lightning strike, it disconnects it very quickly. And then in that case, you're going to want to have a UPS on your computer system. But it can prevent that high voltage charge from traveling throughout your house and blowing up everything that's plugged in. So look into lightning arresters. I think they might have to be installed by an electrician, because it has to be installed in conjunction with your main feed from the electric company.
Go ahead, Mickey.
And yeah, there are also lightning arresters for other copper lines that come into the building, say for cable internet or cable TV. There are lightning arresters for that, as well as any data copper cabling that may be coming in. Say if you have an Ethernet line that's buried underground going to some other part of your property, there are lightning arresters for that as well.
Next question.
Reese Jarrett in Adelaide, Australia. Up next, what are the thoughts of the panel on Twit TV using restream.io instead of dedicated broadcast hardware? It is my understanding that the restream visualizes a web browser on its servers and creates a video output of it for broadcast. Another QR code question.
Go, Jeffrey.
Yeah, that sounds about right for what's going on in Restream. You have Restream, you also have StreamYard, and they're great for doing something that you, especially if you're not in studio. Like if I was out and about and needed to get on a podcast, going on Restream is perfect for that, because then you can continue on with what you're doing. And I think that's where it's going with this is just the fact that, you don't have to have somebody completely manned at the, I don't know what it's called nowadays. It was the brick house or whatever. So by doing that, you put a little bit, you lose a little bit more control, but you have a little bit more option.
Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas is up next. What precautions for security would you take to wipe and sell multiple iPhone Pro Max fully loaded phones on eBay, Facebook, or Craigslist?
Go, Jesse.
If this is one of your iPads or iPhones, one thing I would really do is anything that you're logged in from, go to that actual thing and deactivate that device. So if you're logged into YouTube or Google on your iPad or iPhone, go to google.com and deactivate that device. And do that for everything that you're logged in for that iPad or iPhone. And do your restores using a computer. Connect the device to a computer and do it from Finder. Don't do it on the device. You won't get a full, complete wipe. Or you might be able to, but we've found a lot more consistency when wiping a device from a computer, not from the device.
Go, Jeff.
Apple has some guidelines on this on their site, so they tell you what to do. Again, one of the big things is Find My. Make sure your device is removed from Find My, and this does that in that process because you don't want the device to be bricked if you're trying to sell it. And I'll put the link for that in the Mukana chat.
Next question.
Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington, once again with, what do you think of Simon Sinek's team's use of 9:16 reel format, 2-up, single, full, and reaction shots? And he's got a link to it.
Jesse?
I'm a 235 guy. I have not seen a vertically oriented image that I found to be truly beautiful. Like, I've seen beautiful things in a vertically oriented image, but I haven't seen a beautiful vertical image. This is great for communicating information. I think this is, on the higher end of the best use for a 9:16 image. Never beautiful, but at least it's loaded with information this way.
Good guy.
Yeah, I loved how this one grabbed you right out the gate. They did a 2-up, so it had the host and then the guest, and then they punched in when they went to the single. So it was a full screen of this guest, Scott, and so when they went to Scott and he said something, they punched in like another 10%. So it was a jump cut, one of those just like, boom, push in, and then they went back when Simon Sinek, the host, laughed. They cut back to him full, and it's so well done. I found it to be one of the best that I've seen as far as being able to grab your attention quickly in that format. So, I mean, I would love for us to be able to do something like this. I mean, it's obviously they have a team that's editing these and really paying attention to the content, but this was really effective. Pardon for the language in the thing. I know we want a clean show, otherwise I'd show some of it, but watch it. It's really well done.
Go, Jesse.
I think you hit on the real strength of it, and that was in the editing decisions that they made throughout the video.
Go, Bill.
Yeah, I also just was at the Motion Picture Academy, I guess about 7 months ago, and one of the things they did interestingly in there, that's the Academy Awards thing, was that they had a big display on vertical video. This is about a 40-foot tall vertical screen, and they gave it to artists and said, how would you fill these frames? So there were a whole bunch of shots like this where the director had composed particularly for vertical, and actually I found it relatively compelling. It was a new way of thinking. We're all so used to thinking wide, at least I know I am as somebody who's shot a lot of footage over the course of the years. So to kind of reorient myself and say, what are the possibilities in a vertical format? And I don't think many people are working in it yet. Yes, there's a lot of informational stuff, but the artistic community and cinematographers haven't really embraced vertical. So I think the young people may give us some things to look at later on. Who knows?
Good guy.
Yeah, and the Sunday show, I really loved it when the TD made a choice to have a 2-up, because we rarely do it here during the weekly show, but on the Sunday show, they have a little bit more liberty. And I love seeing when people laugh on the panel, because I'm on the panel and I can see Jeff right now. He's paying attention. I can see who's kind of drifted off. But when people laugh, I mean, it just makes the audience really pay more attention because you're seeing the emotion of the other panelists. I love how this one was edited together. I'd love to see us. I know that there's some other stuff going on testings with vMix and stuff for the vertical format. So I'm excited to see how we get to see the other panelists' reactions to what people are saying. It's an exciting future for.
Next question.
Next one comes from Peter Rosato in Las Vegas, Nevada. Panelists' thoughts on the HPE keynote at the Sphere. Good, Courtney. There's a link there.
I wonder how much Hewlett-Packard had to pay to use that as an introduction. Maybe it's cheaper than installing a giant LED screen. But here you can see
probably not. It's probably pretty expensive.
Here you can see the pitch of the LEDs behind him, and in the wide shot you see how tiny he is in comparison. But then they have all these amazing graphics. Let me cut to a wide shot here somewhere. Let's see. Wait a minute. Here, this is going to probably make your audience seasick, motion sickness in the entire audience. This projected on that sphere for any length of time. I don't know. I guess it's a lot of whiz bang, and I guess it was worth it for Hewlett-Packard. They're still struggling, Hewlett-Packard, I think, since the Carly Fiorina days. So we'll see. Maybe they're introducing something new. I haven't looked at the video itself.
One guess is that there's a lot of HP equipment used in the Sphere, and this was part of the deal. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, so I've been to HPE Discover several times, and this I have a lot of friends that went to this one. We had some discussions afterwards. The one thing that was mentioned was how distracting it was from the actual keynote. I get that this was the first time that a keynote was happening at the Sphere, so I think they wanted to, as Alex said, of course, equipment inside, they probably struck a deal, and being the first people to do it on the Sphere, that also gives it a little bit of credibility. But overall, I think unless you really need to use the Sphere to show off some graphics, show off something off of that, other than the keynote of the next enterprise appliance that's coming out, then it's it is what it is. So they did it, and everybody that was there said that it was a great event. It was a great job, a great keynote that happened. Although they saw the people on stage, they looked like ants.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, it's just skimming through the recording here. I'd say that I would imagine that the experience on site does not really translate well to the broadcast or the recording. It's not pleasing to watch or to look at. But I can see how, if you have an audience on site, it could be something perhaps impressive.
The 5 nines, the 99.999% of the folks that aren't coming, that are never going to come to your event. You got to think about serving them more effectively, and I don't think this does. And I think that to what Mickey said, I just think that you got to think about all the people that are watching that aren't in the space. You can make the space great, but we're kind of past that now. Like it's really like you have to really think about the online audience more than the in-room audience. And if you're not doing that, you're still in the past. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next with the Fostex 6301 monitor seems to be a stalwart of speech monitoring in many productions. Has there been any speaker that has replaced it?
Go ahead, Jeff.
So this is a small monitor, and I love to see that they actually have a Dante version now. The first one that came to mind for me that's a competitor with this Fostex seems to live in the video world for speech and in the audio world, music world for making sure mixes translate to small speakers is the old Oratone. So that would be kind of the competitor to that.
Sorry, I got lost in my thing here. Mickey?
Yeah, the 6301, which is what Jeff just showed us, I would consider it more of a utility speaker. It's used often just like, say, for a squawk box for comms, or for just to very quickly check sources or destinations, make sure audio is going there, getting there cleanly. There are multiple models, and now I think 2 or 3 years ago they released a Dante-capable version. What I use personally is from Remote Audio. It's pretty much a very similar box. It's called the Speakeasy. I like it because it can be powered not only through, because the 6301 needs to be powered off AC. The Speakeasy can be powered off of 9-volt batteries or a DC input ranging from 9 to 18 volts, and that makes it very useful for us in the field, especially like for film or TV productions where we, as much as possible, do not rely on AC power, and we want to get things up and running as quickly as possible, powering things off our battery systems on our cart. So running off DC is very important for us. Other speakers, utility speakers that I find very often in control rooms or in rack rooms or TOCs is the JBL Control 2P. It's a self-powered speaker. Can also be powered off DC, but not as big a range as the Speakeasy. Has balance and unbalanced ends, so it's quite flexible there. Another one I've come across, I think 2 years ago, we had a production that flew in, I think 20 or 30 or so of these Glen Sound small speakers. They are Dante capable speakers and can be PoE powered, so they're really really handy there if you're already running a Dante network. Other solutions that are very popular are for utility speakers are rack mounted speakers. This is the Fostex rack mounted speaker. Remote Audio also has the Speakeasy that's rack mounted. Wohler and Soneffects are two brands that you'll find a lot in broadcast facilities and in broadcast trucks. They not only have analog in, but they have models with SDI in, and you can switch between all the 16 channels of an SDI input. They have MADI and all sorts of digital and analog formats, as well as many of their models could also you could install decoder card so that you can do decoding right on the say Dolby decoding right on the monitor, so you can check your mixes post encode, which is important in the engineering pipeline.
Next question.
Pun alert. Anawahi Black Bear Marshall in the Oahe Nation says, Mr Mee6, that's M-E-E and the number 6, is a powerful assistant tool, but also very annoying sometimes. Is there a way to mute Mr Mee6 for just a specific Discord server and not all servers before MeeSeeks and destroys my sense of well-being?
So I it's a bot. I will say that I have a growing distaste. I'm on a lot of Discord servers, and I have a growing distaste for bots. Like I think that bots are really good for sorting stuff out for the administrators and so on and so forth, to alert them of things and so on and so forth. But I do not think that you should put things in your servers that generates content automatically. I just think that the way a lot of these things format it, the way they put it out, at first I didn't like it on ours. Now I've grown to just not like it everywhere. So I think that, we really need to think about humans posting things and letting it be less efficient, because when people have a lot of bots and they're active on their servers, it makes them unreadable. Next question.
Next question comes to us from James Fosseline in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm looking for audio online to train ears on compression for podcasts.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would actually recommend starting with a raw recording and then applying a compressor. I'm assuming you're talking about dynamic range compression as opposed to data compression or encoding compression. If you're talking about dynamic range compression, I'd recommend get a raw recording of speech, put a compressor on it, and fiddle around with it, so that as you make the adjustments and listen to the changes, you can directly see what parameters make certain things sound a different way.
Go ahead, Jesse.
And if you're looking for audio to kind of train your ear on what compression sounds like, I would go with comparing just your average popular podcast to something coming out of, maybe NPR. And I think what you'll find is there's typically a lot more compression on a homebrew podcast than there is on like a professional broadcast. And you can read between the lines and figure out that I'm trying to nudge you more towards that professional and more away from the overcompressed sound of the modern podcast.
Next question.
Francis Fry in Cambridge, Massachusetts has this one. Does anyone on the panel have experience with offering videos on demand to individuals? If so, which platform have you used? I'm particularly interested in students being able to track their progress through a curriculum.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So what you're looking for is an LMS, a learning management system. The one that I have the most experience with is Blackboard, because that's what my university uses, so it's supplied to us. I just recently did some training for our university HR, and they used Vector Solutions. So that's another one you could take a look at, but you're basically looking for was an LMS, and they give you the ability to put those videos in and track progress through that. You don't open up the next video until you've completed something, and oftentimes there are quizzes that go along with that to see that you've actually watched the video and not just had it playing in a browser screen. So look for an LMS.
And one place that I would look at, I'm going to tell you, send you a place that will sound funny when I start, but worth checking out. There is a artisanbakingcenter.com. It's not, they don't provide the service. They show you how to make bread, but they use a classroom structure that I find to be very pleasing. I don't know, I can't remember what it is, and I was trying to get the name of it from there. But if you go to, let me see if I can pull this over here so you can see it. And I don't know, they do these online classes, and this is it Talent LMS is what Rion says, .com. But this is, so they have these classes here, and you can purchase the class or gift the class, but there is they do a pretty good job of shooting it. I think these guys are out of Tucson. I think I actually went by their place, but they used to have a free one here, I believe, and this is Central Milling in Petaluma. This might be the different one, but there's a baking one. I'll try to find it, and we'll post it again. Ask that question again, and I'll try to find that for you. I'll try to reach out to you, but it's there are some commercial. I'm not super impressed with the LMSs that are used by universities. so like that would be an overstatement, or understatement about how much I dislike most LMSs. And I think that there are some commercial solutions, and I apologize I wasn't able to get to it fast enough on this show, but I think that, and that's probably a good one for us to have as a second hour somewhere of LMSs and talk about them. I don't find them. I find them the challenge with school is that it was is run by people who were good at it. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, they were good at school, but they're good at nugging through things, and they're good at working through little details, and they're good at all those things. And so they don't see the weakness of the process that makes it hard for the other 85%. And that's their blind spot. I mean, everybody's got a blind spot. That's the blind spot I find in education. Not all people. We have people from education in this panel, like Jeff, who don't get caught up in that. And Todd's here. We haven't heard from Todd yet, but he's here. And so we have people in education that oftentimes step outside of all of that. But I think that a lot of times we have the general problem with education is this problem of knowing it, being good at it already, and then being able to work through it. And so I think that what commercial entities do really well is they find ways to make it much more accessible for other folks. And I think that some of these commercial classroom processes are so much smoother than what we see in universities and in schools. Jeff, did you want to add something to that?
I would agree about the large university ones like Blackboard. They're just so it's bloatware is where it becomes. And I saw Francis in the chat. Just wanted to make sure I was going to point out the couple that Evan mentioned. Thinkific, Teachable, and Trainer Central are other ones to look at.
Yeah, but I would look at the commercial solutions, not the university solutions. I just think that they've added too many things. It gets back into the whole. If you asked a bunch of people what to do, they in the turn of the last century, they would ask you for faster horses. You're looking for someone who's making cars. And the commercial entities are starting to make cars. The universities are still building faster horses. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas notes, I read a review of the Espresso 17 Pro display that mentions it favors the red spectrum. Their support said that can be mitigated by calibrating the display, but is it an underlying hardware issue?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, maybe. The problem is when you're making something like this, it's a portable touchscreen display, so you can see the size of this thing, carrying it with you. It runs off a USB-C, so you're limited in the amount of power that you can deliver to it if you're plugging it into a PC or a Mac that is delivering DisplayPort over USB-C. So, it could be, it's difficult to calibrate something, especially if it's got a touchscreen. A lot of times the touchscreen overlay can put an anti-reflective coating on there and a capacitive coating on the screen. And they may shift it a little bit toward the red. Maybe that's what they're talking about. I don't know. I don't have this unit. But calibrating it probably can compensate for any shift that might happen because of the display technology used.
Now I'm going to take a quick break here because we haven't had Todd Reynolds on for a long time, and I'm just excited that he's here. We haven't heard from him at all, and I realized I think he didn't have access to our panel, so I'm not sure if he was going to raise his hand for other things. But Todd, what have you been up to?
Oh, man. Hi, Alex. Hi, everybody. It's really, really good to be back. It's been quite a long time. Let's see. What have I been up to? I've been rebuilding my studio here at home up in North Adams, Massachusetts. And recently, I began to do some work in a local space to us here in North Adams called Studio 9. And since I'm not typing in the panel right now, I'll just tell you what the website is, it's kind of an incredible place. Studio 9, the digit 9, studio9porches.com. And this place is attached to a hotel, all built by the same first-generation owners. It has a Myers Constellation system in it with Space Map, and it's kind of a beautiful, beautiful space, a beautiful recording space, beautiful control room downstairs, has a big video wall, really useful for all sorts of different things, from high-level professional recording to creative, immersive mixing and recording. And I have like visions of all the things that could take place in that room. So I was recently brought in just to take a look at how to address the space map, the actual 50, I think it's 52 speakers in there, and create 16, well, not create, but gain access to 16 individual outputs on Dante. So as you can imagine, with Ableton Live and Max MSP and all of the lovely software that I get to use in my life, it was pretty cool to start flying the sound of my violin and my loops and drum beats and everything kind of all around the space. So I've had a lot of fun doing that, and 1 or 2 performances in there as well.
I can't wait to
tour.
Well, we just have to find a way to go visit Todd. It's at the space. So
I would love to show you the space. I hope that someday I might have cause to come on here and say, who are all of your corporate friends who need to do retreats in the most beautiful place on earth and in a wonderful place, which does meetings just like this. That's kind of what I hope someday that they'll pursue and evolve into.
And if you ever have time for a second hour, we should try to get someone there, do a little walk around. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So let's think about that. Let's
definitely think about it. I have like half of the infrastructure built in my head to do that already. Yeah. So I think it won't be that difficult to do that. Awesome. I mean, it won't be as good as, when Guy Cochran goes around a trade show floor all day, but that's a whole different thing.
That's great. Next question.
Leon in Vienna has the next QR code question here. Has the panel seen the LiveX encoder comparison between ZoomISO, vMix Call, and Rivet SRT? It seems like a very surprising outcome. Zoom was very close or better quality than SRT and nearly as flexible as vMix Call for production thanks to ZoomISO.
Good guy.
Yeah, we had Corey Benke on here on the show, and so I have a lot of respect for these guys, but this assertion that SRT doesn't look as good as Zoom. Come on now. I mean, these you need to adjust some settings and dial in that bit rate. I don't know if they're using H.265 or H.264 and what encoder that they're using, if it's 10-bit or if it's 8-bit. But the real deal is that, we're using Zoom right now. It's very low latency and it's fast, and 1080 accounts look amazing. I mean, for what they are, they don't fall down, but I can get SRT look. Yeah, here's the video that they do the comparison. You can watch for yourself. Anybody who does SRT a lot will argue that they can make this look better just by adjusting some settings and using the right hardware. But yeah, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want real-time conversation? Then use Zoom. And if you have a 1080 account, and we use it with ZoomISO or with Zoom Rooms, and we use NDI, and it looks great. I mean, for what our purposes that we're using it for, I mean, this show, we're doing it here as well. It looks amazing. And maybe they'll actually ramp up that bit rate, but you can get SRT certainly to look way better. And plus, you can go up to 4K. I mean, and 10-bit. There's so much more there. It just depends on how much you want to tweak it, how much money you want to throw into making it look good, and what's at the other end to decode it.
Next question.
Ace Barara and Flowery Branch up next. I am looking to replace my older CalDigit that I use on my Mac Studio M1. Any recommendations?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the OWBC docks. If you require multiple Thunderbolt ports, I would recommend the 11-port Thunderbolt dock from OWBC. It has 3 Thunderbolt ports on top of the host port, so that's really handy if you have a lot of Thunderbolt peripherals that you need to plug in. Otherwise, I would go with the Thunderbolt Pro dock. It has a CF Express slot, which comes in really handy if you need to adjust camera footage.
Next question.
David Brady's up next from New York City, looking for a pair of lightweight, color-accurate SDI-based monitors that don't weigh a ton for installation in a mobile roadcase workstation. And he mentions one here. It's very long. I'll do a little bit of it. ProX XZF-AVPRO2X. Thanks.
Don't read that. So yeah. So we could have a link. I just don't know what that actually is, but. I think that it just depends on also whether you need 12G, 6G, 3G, what are you out? Because those prices change really fast. So if you decide you want a 12G monitor, I still think that one of the best 12G monitors out there is the Blackmagic, especially now that it's dropped in price. Obviously, Atomos is the other big player in this area. So Atomos and Blackmagic both have really good monitors that are very small. Now, if you're trying to go a little bit larger, you actually may want to look at some of the higher-end Lilliputs that have come out. We tested one that I was kind of surprised at the quality of, and here's the thing that made a difference for us when we did it in, we used that for the second day or third day of our coverage of NAB, and it has quarter 20s on every side, which turned out to be pretty useful for us to have a larger monitor, like a 12-inch monitor with that supported HDR to some level and had quarter 20s on all the sides. That became very useful for us. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, for lightweight, I would recommend looking at the Small HD Cine series of monitors. They have ones in a 13-inch, which are pretty popular.
Next question. Oh, sorry, Courtney. Courtney, go ahead.
I was just going to show you the road case that he's building this thing into that's cost around $5,600. So it could hold a pretty substantial set of monitors in there. So
okay, so if we're looking for that size, I think when we said lightweight, color accurate, I think that I was thinking of something smaller than that. And so, go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, in the forums, I've been seeing some good things about these guys, the OC, and we did stop by this booth at NAB, but I would look at some of these Megamons, like the 22-inch Megamon. People on the forum, I mean, they're not bad pricing for what it is, so I would take a look at those ones, OC 21-inch Megamon.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if larger monitors are larger than 13-inch or 7-inch monitors are required, I'd still look at the small HD products, but also take a look at Panasonic and Sony. So for something a bit more affordable, there's a brand called Bon, BON. That is the higher tier of products coming from Lilliput. They brand them Bon. Another brand that is pretty popular is TV Logic.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. With NVIDIA now the world's most valuable company, would you see Apple and NVIDIA rebuilding their relationship and allowing NVIDIA GPUs on the Mac again?
Go ahead, Jesse.
NVIDIA being the world's most valuable company, I would call that weather, not climate. We're in a year of boom because of the big push for AI and huge purchases of their boards. Even if it retains the most valuable company, I wouldn't count on Mac turning to NVIDIA for GPUs.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I would say no, because Mac has gone to an integrated GPU on all of their chipsets, and going to the outside world is not something they're going to look at now.
Next question.
Russell K. in Brooklyn, Maine says, just wanted to say thank you for the lightning bug answers. That was fun.
Go ahead, Mickey.
I just wanted to share as well the sample of slower shutter speeds on digital cameras, like slower than a 360-degree shutter. So here's a sample of a video I found on YouTube, and you can see it's quite all the motions happening at in real-time speed. It's not overcrank or undercranked, but it's just kind of like a choppy stop motion looking blurry images, and it could be a stylistic choice that you want to do, or if you're capturing the bugs, you would be able to see a slight trail on the bugs.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I'm just wondering about that effect. If you didn't capture that in camera and wanted to do that in post, how close would it look?
You could probably do something. Again, the thing to play with is there are a variety of effects. One of them is potentially something like time echo. So you'd want to look at time echo for those kinds of things in After Effects. You can create a lot of those because that's going to take those extra frames and start to blend them back in. And what's interesting about time echo is if you shoot at a higher frame rate. So if you shoot at a 120 frames per second for a 24 delivery, you have a lot of extra frames to work with. You just want to make sure that you set your shutter speed to at least 360 degrees for the 120 to do. You need to give that motion blur. It adds more for the blend between those, and so you'll find that things like Twixtor and other things can actually reduce that back down. You can get the core back down to that, but using time echo, it has all those extra frames to grab onto and to blend. So I would take a look at those things. Coming up next, we have Robert Lighthouse here. We're pretty excited about this. So we'll have him on in just a minute. And a quick reminder, we're talking about VisVector tomorrow. Just giving you an update. Actually, some of the VisVector team is going to be here tomorrow, so we'll be able to answer your questions. But we'll give you an update of where we're going. Our first show will be Saturday. I'm sorry, it's not Saturday. Monday. So Monday, Grant is going to be hosting it. It's going to be a slightly different format, and we're going to be doing it 6 p.m. on Monday. So that's a little bit of a change for us. And so we're going to, so stay tuned for that. We're pretty excited about getting that first show out the door. That'll all be done in the cloud. So that's us testing a bunch of things there. Friday, network layering and hierarchy. So just to make sure to stay tuned for both of those later this week.